Ladies and gentlemen, we are now gathered to induct the latest entrant into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. Our latest entrant into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame is important because he's the first member of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And I could not think of a better person to be inducted as our first member into the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame for a number of reasons. When I think about our sport of wrestling that we've covered here over the past 5 years on Sportswire Radio, there is no greater person that has accomplished what this man has done, especially in the companies XCW and, of course, EBW, which he's the leader of. When we look at our latest entrant into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame's resume, it's as good as anybody's as we'll ever have here in the Hall of Fame. 7 times he's won the XCW World Heavyweight Championship. 4 times he's won the EBW Heavyweight Championship. 4 times an XCW Tag Team Champion. 3 times an International Champion. 2 times a New Age Champion. An Extreme Champion. He was also a 2-time XCW Superstar of the Year in 2005 and in 2008. And he was inducted into the XCW's Hall of Fame in 2005. And above all of that, for the past 4 decades, that's right, 4 decades, our first member of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame has still been going strong year after year, and he's going to prove why he's going to be on top in 4 decades and more when he takes squares off in XCW's Cold Day in Hell on February the 8th, 28 days from now, when he goes up for a match that he created, the Full Metal Madness match, against ACT for that XCW championship that he'll look to bring home back to EBW, where it belongs. And even outside of that, in the world of XCW and EBW, our newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame is a well-accomplished and well-respected writer, recently winning in the last week the 2023 Lords of Gaming Writer of the Year, which is one of the premier gaming publications in the world, where the Lords of Gaming podcast on their YouTube channel has, get this, ladies and gentlemen, over 20,000 subscribers. Above all of that, it is my great honor to induct as the first member of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, the XCW 2005 Hall of Famer, 7-time XCW champion, 4-time EBW champion, and most notably currently, the EBW leader, the franchise of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, Chris Jones. Chris, congratulations, but just like the first 10 participants, including one man you sort of share a locker room with, Mr. Jackson Law of XCW, it's time for you to get that introduction that the previous 10 participants in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame have gotten. So with that, without further ado here on the Sports Report, number 1 global sports show, the first member of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, now the franchise player of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, Chris Jones. My friend, congratulations.
Thanks, appreciate it. With an introduction like that, how can we go on? End of the show.
I actually felt like this was unfortunately, I felt like, I don't know if it was my worst one, but it was weird because you have so much accomplishments. You are kind of the GOAT, the Mount Rushmore of this sport. It was like, I was trying to remember every single one of them. And I know I flubbed on a few of them and I flubbed on a few different things, but I think people will watch it still and enjoy the intro. And it'll be a memorable one because you are the first member of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And it is true because, Jackson kind of concluded the first class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. You start the second class. And it's kind of been this theme here on Sportswire Radio as we're basically closing or maybe starting, whatever you might want to call it, our XCW. Now, for you, of course, EBW week on Sportswire Radio because we had DJ Wahlberg Thursday. We had certainly Jackson Law. We had Jack Delta on Monday. And then we have you here. So in a way, it's kind of like the ending or the beginning, whatever you might want to call it, of XCW, EBW coverage here when it comes to Sportswire Radio. So I did think in a way it was kind of fitting to give you an intro that was good as that. But I will say, though, I still feel like I forgot to list like half of your accomplishments.
I mean, there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't remember. First Grand Slam champion for XCW, but it's not a big deal. You listed off the majority. Sometimes, being a great wrestler or a great human in the wrestling business is not all about the championships. Sometimes a good story can be told without a championship. You look at, you go back to 2020 when I wrestled Fletch, and the last time we've ever stepped in the ring together, we had one promo apiece and one match, and we told a great story with just those three appearances. I mean, sometimes it's not all about the championships.
Well, you know what? We're going to certainly talk about a great storyline in a second here. And before I do that, I do want to say hello to a few people. I want to say hello to my buddy Ron Franklin. Ron's out there in Pennsylvania. Ron, how you doing? Good luck to your Packers. And actually somebody that you will now once again call a colleague of and share now not one but two Hall of Fames also with. The first real wrestler, by the way, I apologize, but actually I'm wearing his shirt right now. The first real wrestler. He is one half of those XCW tag team champions. He is Mr. Justin Parsley. He says, hi, CJ / JP. And he also says, good evening, TB. I guess Justin Parsley's now into, initials now. So thank you, Justin, for tuning in with us. But we'll certainly come back to that. We'll plug some of your stuff. We'll plug some EBW, XCW stuff in a second. But I do have to ask you, you talked about storylines, Chris Jones, and there is a storyline that I think that has been continuing to develop here throughout the second half of 2023, now into 2024. And it all, in a way, kind of came to a head at New Year's Nemesis and even what we saw most recently on Encounters, because it has now been announced you've decided finally to step back in the ring. And on February the 8th, cold day in hell, it's going to be for that XCW World Championship, a championship you have won 7 times, and you finally square off against ACT, a man that has been in your crosshairs for the better part of 5 months now. And not only are you squaring off against him for that XCW World Heavyweight Championship, but you've decided to put him in a match that you've never lost in, a match that you've created. And for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, tell us what we can expect Thursday, February the 8th, cold day in hell, you and ACT for that XCW World Championship in a Full Metal Madness match.
Well, first off, some people might not actually know the rules. So let me explain the rules of a match that Chris Jones created. In this match, I want to beat and brutalize my opponent. Everything of any type of metal is legal. Ladders, thumbtacks, barbed wire, steel chairs. Now, if you've watched previous match, barbed wire Christmas tree, barbed wire briefcase, anything we can do to get our hands on metal-wise. There's no submission in this match. There's only pinfall. So you're going to have to beat me within an inch of your life, ACT. If you want me to be down for that 3 count, you're going to have to beat and brutalize Chris Jones, something that not many can say that they've done in the past over my 4-decade career.
That's still amazing to me. Yeah, the 4-decade part to me, and still on top, still going strong. I think you're more relevant now than you were, frankly, in 2014, 2004. We're in 2024. And, I guess in a way, in a match like this, certainly you have caused ACT to basically live in a living hell. I mean, sure, he's got the XCW championship, but he certainly has not been resting easy these days. And I have to think, with all the matches we've seen ACT in lately, Obviously, Hayden Beck's a man who no longer is in EBW, and certainly, I guess maybe he couldn't cut the mustard. Maybe he couldn't finally win the big one. And certainly, maybe that's a different story for a different time. Brady Branson, Jackson Law, who was on here. Well, obviously, ACT got past Jackson Law. ACT has had an impressive run, but he's struggled in all these matches, and I got to think here, I mean, maybe ACT's luck, maybe Cinderella's clock finally strikes at 12 on February the 8th, 2024, when you step foot against him. Is that what you kind of think here?
Well, here's the thing. You can go back through XW history. One thing Chris Jones always been about is you get that one chance, and then you got to get your ass in gear. You go back to the Untouchables. I laid down the foundation. You lose, you're done. So now we're going to fast forward to 2024, and in 2023, it didn't end quite so well for EBW. Brady Branson's kind of on a losing streak. Miano Diaz kind of on a losing streak. Hayden Vex.
Hayden Vex is no longer here. He's sayonara because, he couldn't cut the mustard anymore in EBW. I mean, obviously, you are certainly a ruthless leader. You are certainly a leader that does not tolerate losses, and that's why Hayden Vex is basically sayonara.
Yeah, and this match is not for the faint of heart. If I want to beat ACT out in the streets, I can beat him out in the street and pin him out there. Pinfall can go anywhere. But when ACT walks into this match, he's not getting, the fun-loving, cheer Chris Jones against Brogan O'Shea. Chris Jones, that's not this guy. I'm here to set an example for people like Brady Branson. I'm here to set an example for people like Miano Diaz. I'm here to set an example for people like Hayden Vex, like James Cerebral, like Lee
associate.
Let me ask you a question real quick, Tom.
Yeah, ask me
how many main event matches did you see Miano Diaz in before Chris Jones came back?
0.
How many world title matches did you see Miano Diaz before Chris Jones came back?
0.
What was Miano doing before Chris Jones came back?
He was in a tag team with Patrick O'Reilly.
How many world titles did Patrick O'Reilly have?
0.
Is that exactly my point? If they're going to pull Chris Jones out of purgatory, and I was just fine. I was, living a high life.
No false finishes. Listen, you were hosting no false finishes. I love this.
But I'm here to set an example for my team. I'm here to set an example for ACT. ACT's trying to complete that Cinderella story, win Extreme King, fall short, beat Corey Lee, get beat down the rest of the season. So here's the opportunity. A match he's never been in, a match I've never lost, a match I'm going in with a different mindset because I want to beat ACT so bad that his newly crowned fiance, as of the last 6 months, is not going to recognize what he looks like. So if ACT...
You mentioned her by name, by the way. You almost broke the fourth wall there. Even for you, Chris Jones, you mentioned Katie by name. Now, we know who Katie is. We certainly don't want to really say too much about her, but we've certainly seen her in many of the XCW shows throughout the past year or two, and you basically looked her in the eye and said what you're going to do to ACT. I mean, that was as cold and cunning as I think I've ever seen anybody say and do and look the eye of their significant other. I mean, that was certainly cold and cunning, Mr. Jones.
When it comes to Chris Jones and XCW and EBW, Chris Jones does what Chris Jones does. I mean, you go back and you look when I was the general manager, she might have been mentioned back then too. You might have to go back in the archives and find out what I'm talking about. But ACT gets his chance to finish that Cinderella story. He wants to not be taken as a joke. He wants to cement the legacy that is ACT. He gets that opportunity. One last boss. One final boss. ACT can break away from the pack and finally cement himself as a real wrestler, as a real champion. He gets that opportunity. Can he get the job done? Not when it comes to the franchise player, Chris Jones. In Full Metal Madness, a match I've never lost. You go back and look at the other match I was in. I wrestled Venom, a guy that was on a streak for
longest. We know Venom very well, obviously. And I'm going to ask you about Venom in a little while.
Longest world champion. And what I do, I put it all on the line. My best friends, late great Kurt Acid, Fletch, Hazard, my career, we put all our careers on the line. And when it matters most, when that career is on the line, Chris Jones didn't lose. But you go back to my first promo that I harped at when I came back, the show after SummerMania, my first in-ring show, you go back, Fletch put Chris Jones' career on the line. What happened?
Well, I want to definitely get to that. I do want to say hello to our friends over at. The reason why I'm going to bring them up in a second, because this will certainly pertain to your match, actually, is our friends over at Tennessee Backyard Wrestling. Obviously, we had yesterday on the show in your chair the Atomic Titan, who's now going by the Hardcore King, and he's also the Hardcore King of Sportswire Radio. He is also Hollywood Titan now, but certainly the reason I bring him up is because, yesterday, ACT, right? He was on Sportswire Radio commenting about the Atomic Titan. He seemed to be enthralled with the Atomic Titan, who's now the Hardcore King, and he's challenging all these hardcore gods out there, whoever you might want to call him. And Omen Black, a guy who works in XCW technically, Soldier GP, Jimmy Controversy, Mikey Anarchy, Hardcore, Obey, Mac 10. Point is that ACT was basically mouthing off to outside competitors. Maybe this has advantaged Chris Jones because ACT now, he's basically fighting off those who basically feel that ACT, I don't know about him. I look at him and say, what kind of champion is he? ACT doesn't really have the look and the prestige as prior XCW champions, like yourself, certainly. And maybe this is the plan all along, and that you've got ACT kind of hot and bothered by those outside of XCW who want to prove a point and show that they're the best in this sport, show that they're the ones who are Hollywood, show that they're the ones who are hardcore, because ACT was calling himself the Hardcore King. ACT was saying he was the one that was hardcore. He was mouthing off at the Atomic Titan, who's now, again, the Hardcore King of Sportswire Radio, and is now Hollywood Titan. But what he really should be worried about is squaring off against you February the 8th, 28 days from tomorrow, Full Metal Madness, for his championship, which he might only be holding for a few more days till it returns to you for an 8th time.
If I could say anything to ACT that's not about me whipping his ass, I'll say this. You've known me quite a few years now. How many people have you seen me talk to outside XCW, Tom? You've seen me interact with one person.
Yep.
One person had that shot. One person wanted a shot at the champ. Aaron Blaze, not one of Chris Jones's targets. Aaron Blaze wanted to step in the ring. Aaron Blaze, that one guy from outside the company, that one opportunity. What happened to Aaron Blaze? Fell to Chris Jones.
Yep. Don't even know who he is anymore. Aaron Blaze, who? Who is he? Who? I know nothing about him now.
I will say one thing. Excellent in-ring competitor, but wasn't enough to get it done against Chris Jones.
Couldn't cut the mustard in XCW. Couldn't cut the mustard where the gold standard is in this sport. Couldn't cut the mustard where the big boys play. Certainly let his own outside interest, certainly let his own demons get the best of him. That's why he's history. But the facts is that Chris Jones, you certainly the man, Mr. Mount Rushmore. Now, Mr. Two-time Hall of Famer. You've done this. You've done that. And ACT, you know what? Maybe you've got him right where you want him, but also on top of that, ACT seems to be now, is he maybe because of what you said about going back to his fiance, he's now going to have to fight for her because you brought her up. And, sometimes they say this all the time. You know this better than anybody. You have been a world champion 12 times in your career. Let me repeat. 12 times you have been a heavyweight champion. 1 BYWE, 7 times XCW, 4 times EBW, and just maybe you've got ACT right where you want him because now he's going to be fighting for personal better half. And now he's not even focused on what he needs to do to beat you. You've the one that's played the mind games.
Yeah, I don't let outside politics or anything like that affect. Chris Jones is in a league above the rest. I'm not out here talking about TBW. I'm not out here talking about the pretend EBW you had on the show a while back. Yeah, I seen it. I'm not here.
Really? You did hear that. You did. Wow, you really do hear everything. I'm always wondering, do you actually watch these shows? And you actually just confirmed you did. Interesting. Thank you very much, I suppose.
One of my friends shared a quote with me a long time ago. I'll share it with you. Real G's move in silence. I will continue to be in the background. I'm always watching. I might not be vocal like ACT, but I'm always watching. Maybe ACT feels like I said, he wants to cement his legacy. He wants to break away from the pack. He wants to be noticed as a real champion. He wants to beat that final boss, Chris Jones. Maybe he feels inside He has to go do that stuff. He has to go prove himself when all he's got to do, let me do your little thing. Keep your mind right here. Chris Jones is where your focus needs to be.
I do
All you got
think
to do is beat me.
let me ask you a follow up, and I want to say hello to somebody special in the other side of the world in a second. I want to actually tell him that I want him back on Sportswire. But let me ask you a question. Do you think that's also where it's his lack of experience or maybe his lack of maturity and understanding his circumstances, understanding what he needs to do at hand, rather than the fact that now he seems to be focused on other things and he's really struggled as champion to kind of hold his spot? Do you think also that what we've seen from him and kind of his later actions and even just some of the things we've seen him here on Sportswire, that this shows to you, ACT, kind of an immaturity and a lack of experience as a champion that's going to cost him coming up in 28 days?
I'd say it's a big part of it. I can't remember exactly how many years ACT's been in XCW, but I'll give you a little history lesson. Chris Jones might have started backyard wrestling in 1996.
You said
But,
96. I've
yeah.
got that ingrained in my head.
I did think for a second. 96. But even when Chris Jones got to XCW in 2004, I might have been, still to this day, had the fastest career projection. April 16th, debut, the inaugural Power Title Battle Royal. May 7th, start a feud that still goes on to this day in the XCW archives with Cynical, XCW legend, Hall of Famer, Cynical. Fast forward, May 7th, we're feuding for that Power title. May 14th, I win that Power title. Fast forward to Greed. You know, I might call a couple shows Greed. To me, Greed's one of my favorite shows of all time. I beat Fletch and Cynical's tag team partner DTC to win my first ever XCW championship. I was never supposed to be the leader of a New Power Generation, which would go on to be Shelbyville Heat. And, just all that catapulted with me having an ego, with me being full of myself, with me being hated by pretty much the whole locker room. But one thing I couldn't doubt was my wrestling know-how and my skill. So I was once young and immature in XCW. So as you alluded to, maybe ACT has a little bit of growing to do.
And I would even say that, in fact, you've been around so long in this sport and been on top so long, you've actually been on top longer in this sport than ACT's been alive. I mean, that shows you the relevancy. That shows you just how not only good, how great you've been. And that's why you were a two-time Hall of Fame. And I wanted to put it up here on the screen for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio. This is what you get here, especially for being in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. You actually get one of these. And Chris Jones definitely earned this because he is now officially the 11th member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, which now is the first of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. So congratulations here, Chris Jones, in being the 11th participant in the Sportswire, or the 11th member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. Let me correct myself because somebody will say, well, it's a participant. No, it's the 11th member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame and the first entrant of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And I want to say hello before we do anything else. I want to say hello to the Tribal Cheese logo. He is somebody we're acknowledging here on Sportswire Radio because he is up at 4:25 in the morning in the UK. And I am wondering, when are you coming back on Sportswire Radio? And in fact, I want you back on Sportswire Radio, I think, right before that January 27th show for Cutlery Championship Wrestling's Fighter Strike 3. In fact, CCW is so awesome on Sportswire Radio. We have actually given them their own month here on Sportswire Radio, which you can actually see right coming up here. So that's actually CCW month here. The entire month of January has been dedicated to our very good friends on the other side of the pond, CCW. We call them Cutlery Community Wrestling. You can check them out here. So let's definitely make sure that we see more CCW coverage on Sportswire Radio. And yes, the Tribal Cheese likes that. So yes, definitely like that. And the Tribal Cheese maybe will get you inducted into the Hall of Fame right after that. So maybe we can do that right before the 27th. So maybe the 24th or the 26th sounds pretty good to me on that. But, if I were to bring up Mr. Jones, somebody here that wants to say hello to you that, you might know very well, would you like me to bring them up? In fact, somebody that we've spoke quite a bit about here over the past 15 minutes, would you be okay? Even though it's your show, it's your moment of history, it's your day to be acknowledged as the GOAT here, especially in Sportswire Radio's history and certainly XCW, EBW. Would you still like me to be able to bring up this person's comment?
Sure, go ahead.
Recognize the name?
I definitely do recognize the person.
You have anything you want to say to them?
Just a few short weeks away. You're going to be in the chance of a lifetime. You're going to wrestle somebody. Look at me in the eyes when I'm talking to you. You're going to wrestle somebody you've never had the experience of wrestling. You're going to get an opportunity that only so many people can dream of. I'm going to give you that opportunity to beat that final boss, to break away from the pack, break away from your brother, break away from Brogan, break away from all the other people that you've been held up by. I'm going to give you a chance to show me that you're the real one, that you can be a real XCW champion. You can be a real future Hall of Famer, because it's going to be ACT, Chris Jones, Cold Day, Full Metal Madness, XCW championship on the line. You want that respect? You got to earn it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can watch the show Cold Day in Hell, February the 8th, 2024, Thursday, 28 days from now, on the XCW YouTube page. And what we've done here on Sportswire, because I know we don't technically have an EBW page yet. Maybe when you win on the 8th of February, maybe we'll change the name to EBW, I suppose. But until then, Mr. Jones, we do have to plug XCW on YouTube at XCW Shelbyville, XCW All Access, Instagram, XCW_Shelbyville, Twitter, XC Wrestling 1. And if you want to buy some EBW merchandise, you can actually do it at xcwrestling1.wixsite.com/Shelbyville. You can get all your information on Chris Jones, ACT, EBW, XCW. And I promise, for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, as the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station where all wrestling matters, is your voice of all wrestling, the Reverend Tom Bryce. In the coming weeks, I will actually buy an EBW shirt, because Chris Jones is in our Hall of Fame, and we don't want Chris Jones to go after us like he went after the crowd at New Year's Nemesis. I mean, Chris Jones, the way you went after that crowd, I mean, you were calling out those in the locker room. You were calling out fans. I mean, you were using profanities. I mean, listen, if I'm this individual, certainly that individual might be holding that title right now, I would certainly say, you know what, maybe I want to forfeit. Maybe I want to let the referee count to 10, give the title away, and just let you have that championship for an 8th time, and just maybe let you have the keys to XCW. Because after what we saw in that promo from you, I mean, I would not want to be right now that individual. That individual right here should very, 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 very be afraid about getting in the ring with you in a match that you have never, never lost. And this participant here that's going to be in that match against you for that championship he holds temporarily should certainly be more focused on you than those outside of Sportswire Radio, who might be hardcore kings and others. So certainly those are things that we want to talk about for sure. We'll come back to. But I did want to ask you, obviously Venom is out in XCW. You have to be a very, very happy man. You have to be vindicated. I mean, is this all going to plan now? It seems EBW, as you mentioned, kind of had, I guess, a mixed bag when it came to the end of the season. But with Venom being out, XCW seems to be in more turmoil. And to even add further insult to injury, if we've watched these Encounters episodes, I mean, XCW has really struggled. I mean, XCW hasn't been able to beat, outside competitors. We've even seen Parsley and Slater struggle. I mean, we saw DJ Wolbert and Shane Shaw reunite, and they struggled. I mean, Brady, I hate to say it, but Brady Branson, even if EBW struggled, I mean, everybody's struggling right now, but that's still got to be, at the end of the day, advantage to you, Chris Jones, because with Venom out, I mean, XCW seems to be in shambles.
Let me ask you a question, Tom.
Yes,
one person that hasn't struggled?
Chris Jones.
Chris Jones. I've been back 2 matches. Granted, I might have injured myself in the first match. Still feeling the effects of it a little bit to this day, but it won't affect me at all come Cold Day. And as you alluded to, XCW kind of in shambles. Brady losing as well. Like, no knock to Jack Delta. Jack Delta, an outside competitor, came in. He was New Age champion for a short time. If XCW is losing championships, outside participants, I feel sorry when it comes to me and ACT at Cold Day. Like I said, I alluded to earlier, EBW having a rough 2023 to close out the year. Chris Jones won't hesitate to jump in his own team's ass. I mean, I'll have to go, call up Brady, Miano, James Cerebral, Luke Blaze, and, starting to get do or die time. 2024 is the year that we sink our teeth and we truly accomplish what we come back to do. Chris Jones, real quick, Chris Jones didn't come back to lose. Chris Jones came back. I had 4 targets, and I wanted EBW to take over. I'm not going to come back and get disappointed by my own teammates.
Absolutely. And I definitely get back to some of the things you said, but you brought up obviously EBW and yourself, Brady Branson, who was the XCW world champion. And maybe the one solace you take in Brady is that he won the most awards at Viewers' Choice Awards. So at least there was that. That was sort of a bright spot. Miano Diaz, I mean, you could certainly get a huge feather in your cap at Cold Day in Hell if he certainly defeats and dismantles Fletch. That's certainly something. Maybe I'll ask you one. And James Cerebral does at the very least have the hardcore title, but alongside yourself and Luke Blaze, now that it's maybe more leaner EBW, I'm assuming it's going to be a more meaner EBW going forward. And did you guys maybe have a powwow these past maybe couple of days and kind of talk about the direction of the group? Because I think certainly when you mentioned some of those names, you mentioned some of the mixed bag. I would kind of think here, Mr. Jones, that you guys have certainly talked, and I think there'll be more of a focus on what to do going forward. And that's going to certainly start, I have no doubt, coming up here in 28 days at Cold Day in Hell.
I think in 2024, you'll definitely see a new EBW. There's already changes working in the background. If you stay focused and watch all the XCW encounters, you'll see some things that are happening. But it's do or die time. Like I said, I didn't come back to lose. I was fine in my purgatory retirement. I was enjoying life.
No false finish shows we enjoyed. We did enjoy those.
I came back for a reason, to elevate and take over. Brady losing the world title. Okay, that's one. We can get that back. Miano Diaz was an EBW title. That was a little dagger. We get that back. Some people are making changes. You see what Miano Diaz did after he lost the rematch to Brogan O'Shea. He took that mask off and showed a new attitude.
Oh, what he did to Fletch at New Year's Nemesis. I mean, I would not want to be Fletch right now. Fletch has got a lot of problems right now. Fletch, he shouldn't worry about fighting for Venom's job. I know he was here on Sportswire. We inducted him in the Hall of Fame right before New Year's Nemesis, but I think Fletch right now, I mean, he's got a Miano Diaz, and I'm sure you're definitely talking to him. I'm sure you're definitely giving him insight. I'm sure he's listening to you like he never has before, and I would not want to be Fletch right now. Fletch is in a lot of trouble, I think.
Miano Diaz has one benefit the ACT doesn't have currently. He's got Chris Jones in that ear.
That's true. That's true. So, ACT doesn't. He doesn't. He has Katie, I suppose.
Yeah. So if you look at the people that have the most experience with Fletch, you think very few people that are wrestling. You think, Hazard was a wrestler. Hazard best friends with Fletch for many, many years, no longer. Cynical, best friends of Fletch for many, many years, not nearly around as often. Who's the one guy still around? Who's the one guy still talks to Fletch occasionally? Who's the one guy that buys Fletch's son an EBW shirt for Christmas?
It'd be Chris Jones. Chris Jones. You are certainly the one that's left. I mean, Corey Lee maybe comes close. I mean, I would say Corey has been around. We wouldn't have the relationship that you would have with Chris Jones. So it's obviously you're going to certainly be giving Miano a lot of pointers, a lot of insight. And Miano, I certainly think, is going to use what you're telling him for all the advantages in the world for him coming up February the 8th, 2024, 28 days from now at Cold Day. Pretty much 28 days and 24 minutes if you're really counting. But somebody does want to say hello to you who is one of the champions here, our XCW New Age champion, who, by the way, on Monday's show, I got to bring this up. Also, if you don't mind, speaking of guests, I actually want to give him a very happy birthday because on Monday's show, we actually had Jack Delta Day. We declared it Jack Delta Day on all Sportswire radio platforms. It is our XCW New Age champion of the world, Mr. Jack Delta. And Jack, happy birthday to you. I hope you have a great day coming up. I hope that you have many more birthdays ahead. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the ring next Thursday at Encounters Episode 6, defending your New Age Championship against SC Justice. And he says, much love, Chris Jones. Had one of my favorite conversations down there in XCW. Congratulations on the induction. I know you can't give anything away, Chris Jones, but knowing that Jack Delta is our XCW New Age champion, And knowing here how much love we have for him here on Sportswire, and certainly it's his birthday coming up. We had Jack Delta Day on Monday. We looked at Jack Delta kind of like our modern day Hulk Hogan for what he's done in the yard, what he's done in this sport. We wanted to honor him for a special day. But is there any chance you think that he would be a potential recruit in EBW for you guys? I mean, Jack Delta is one of the biggest in this sport. You know, you put you and him in the same room together, Jack Delta and Chris Jones. I mean, the heavens would move, the earth would rumble. I mean, what do you think about the possibility of Jack Delta and EBW?
Why don't you read that comment one more time to yourself, Tom?
All right, can I do that out loud, by the way? Would you be okay?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. You are Hall of Famer, and I wanted to oblige. Much love, Chris Jones. Had one of my favorite conversations down there in XCW. Congrats on the induction. Yeah, it sounds to me like, you know what? Chris Jones seems like that Jack Delta's a fan of his, and maybe, you know what? Maybe Jack Delta would like to work with Chris Jones. That's what it sounds to me.
Chris Jones is always having conversations with potential, and like you mentioned, Jack Delta's been a name in the yard, a big name. So I mean,
big name.
Why wouldn't we consider Jack Delta to join EBW? I mean, he came into XCW. Won the New Age Championship.
And just his second match in XCW, he wins the New Age Championship from Eric Mason. Eric Mason, a man that has certainly not been a fan of EBW. Eric Mason with the Mason Express, he was going for the 7 defenses of the New Age title to get himself a chance at Leon Lux and that international title. And Jack Delta struck him down, and Jack Delta was able to knock him down and pick up a New Age Championship. And you know, it's Jack Delta doing what Jack Delta does best, and Jack Delta's got 27 championships in his resume. That's right, 27 championships, 23 promotions, 8 states. Jack Delta would be a great addition to EBW. I think that Jack Delta and EBW, I know you're not going to tell us what's going to go on here. I know you can't say anything, Mr. Jones, but I'm sure you and Mr. Blaze have had many of conversations, and I would just think that, you know, maybe one day, maybe it's next week, maybe it's next month, who knows? But Jack Delta and EBW. Jack Delta would look really good in an EBW shirt, just saying.
The one thing I'll tell Tom and the fans of Sportswire Radio is when it comes to EBW recruitment, we got our eyes on everyone.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Anybody from anywhere could be a recruit in EBW. That's why we want to follow Chris Jones on a number of different platforms. We're going to pull it up right here for you. All you have to do is go to Instagram, CUnit Chris Jones, Twitter, CUnit123, and TikTok at CUnit Chris Jones. And also check him out on Threads. This man also, by the way, a damn good writer, the 2023 Lords of Gaming Writer of the Year. That's right, the 2023 Lords of Gaming Writer of the Year. And he's now a 2-time Hall of Famer. Jack Delta definitely could be, who knows, maybe could be an EBW member. Who knows, whatever the future might be for Jack Delta. I cannot wait for Counters Episode 6 against Jesse Justice for that New Age title. And happy birthday again, Jack Delta. Jack Delta, thank you for all that you do for us here in this sport. And it was my great honor to certainly induct you here for Jack Delta Day on Sportswire Radio. The first person to get his own day here on Sportswire Radio was the great Jack Delta. Let me come back here to some more comments. I want to say hello to my buddy D'Angelo LaFlame. D'Angelo LaFlame is the Resurrection Wrestling Internet Champion, a young and up-and-coming star. Chris Jones, maybe a guy that you want to keep an eye on. Ethan Sorensen, I definitely, we will fix that. Okay, I will fix your TikTok. See you at Chris Jones. I will apologize for that. I will fix that on the screen. Thank you. Clearly, my eyes need to be checked. Thank you, Mr. Jones, for reminding me that you are a Hall of Famer, and I don't want to certainly face the route that ACT does. So I'll fix that here in a few minutes. But obviously, maybe I will let Ethan Sorensen ask you a question. I've asked you this question before, but because Ethan's on the other side of the world, if you had a favorite feud in your career, what would it be?
That's rough. You look at it, 2024 will be 20 years in XCW alone. So just to name a couple feuds, obviously, I've been feuding Justin Parsley since the beginning. I mean, he was in.
I'm going to get to him. Don't worry, I'm getting to him again.
He was in my very first company, all the way back in HCW. Obviously, and
you were in his Fed too for a while. You were in for his company for a while as well.
I've always been a big supporter of Justin Parsley, even when Fletch and Parsley hate each other. But to move on, I've been feuding Fletch since 2004, VK2, New Power Generation days. Hazard, I've had some hellacious matches, Hazard death matches.
Yep.
Tommy Merriman. We even involved my real life girlfriend at one point in time with a feud with Tommy.
Tommy the Man Merriman.
I threw Tommy off a roof through an ironing board. Like, the list goes on, but the one person I didn't mention yet that I think is probably the longest running, the feud that everybody still talks about to this day, the feud that might never end,
Oh, God.
Chris Jones and Cynical.
Yeah, I knew that.
Started April 16th, 2004. Even as late as a match fighting against Corey Lee, Cynical would come in and be Corey Lee's impromptu tag team partner. And, for outside wrestling, Cynical's been one of my best friends for many years. Outside the 2004 into 2005 era where, I have mentioned several times, even on No Falls Finish, Chris Jones wasn't well liked by many people back then, but Cynical's been a real life friend for many years. We've helped each other through many hard times. We've partied through many times. So it's got to be Chris Jones, Cynical, Chris Jones, and Fletch. But I got to go Chris Jones, Cynical. It's a multifaceted feud. XCW, Cynical's popped in BYWE once. I worked at McDonald's at one point. Cynical worked at Wendy's. We tied that in. So,
I actually, though, I know somebody will be watching this. A woman, Jules, will probably chuckle at this. But I do kind of prefer Wendy's more than McDonald's. To
be honest, I actually prefer Wendy's over McDonald's. So.
Oh, wow, okay. Oh, well, that's why you're in the Hall of Fame. That's why you're a 2-time Hall of Famer. But, that's kind of a funny one there. So that's certainly, the things here we'll keep in mind, keep an eye on. But there is somebody here I have to bring a comment. But we did fix the TikTok. I promise you we fix it. But somebody here doesn't like EBW. And I want to bring up this person's comment here because they say EBW equals trash. And, I think clearly somebody has got the wrong company to say that for. Maybe they were thinking XCW equals trash, but they want to say EBW equals trash. And, just wanted to put that out there.
To be honest, until recently, I didn't even know this wrestler's real name was this until recently. So, it shows how much I need to pay attention to the bottom of the roster.
Well, you're a busy man. You're a busy man. You're recruiting people. You're recruiting the top names of this sport. You got EBW meetings left and right. You've got certainly EBW scouting reports. You've obviously gotten the head of ACT. So, you've been a very, very busy man. I understand. You've certainly been somebody that, you have a lot on your plate. You're also a champion writer. There's a lot that you have going on out there. So,
all jokes aside, real quick, we talk about this comment right here. Let me ask him a question since he's watching in chat. Let me ask him a question. You hate EBW so much. You want to support that XCW brand. You want to assert your dominance. You want to make a name for yourself as a rookie. Well, let me ask you something, Eric Mason. EBW so trash. XCW so great.
Where's your championship? Where's
that new age title? You really.
I'm going to save you the trouble for a second, Mr. Jones. I think that Mr. Mason, maybe he's focused now on the baseball card world. Maybe that, Jack Delta beat him so badly that maybe instead of thinking about XCW, thinking about EBW, maybe he's going into the baseball card world. Maybe that's really, if we're shooting here, Chris Jones, if we're really shooting here, maybe, listen, Mr. Mason is focused on becoming a card owner. Maybe that's the trick. Maybe that's what it is, because he saw that Jack Delta came and Jack Delta went and conquered and took that New Age championship. And, that's why he's upset, and maybe he's focused on outside interest. There you go. Chris Jones.
People too much focused away from having their eyes on the prize. Let me say one last thing to Eric Mason.
Yes, sir.
We always got a spot for you. We'll find something for you. It might not be wrestling because, Chris Jones don't like EBW to lose, like I've alluded to. But, maybe you could cook for us or wash our laundry or something along those lines like Ryan Grayson did back in the day.
Well, I would even say, listen, if you're into the card collecting, maybe he can, spare you some, autographs, some really worth autograph cards that are out there that maybe you guys can sell, turn over a profit, and maybe you guys can use that to line your pockets further. That might even be a better idea, a more lucrative idea, don't you think?
maybe he should try to listen when Chris Jones spreads those words of wisdom, and losing New Age title might not happen.
Well, maybe we'll bring Mr. Mason back onto Sportswire in the coming weeks, and we'll see what Mr. Mason has to say. But until then, obviously, his comments certainly, let's just say, it leaves a lot more to be desired. But we are on Sportswire Radio here. We are here now with the first member of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, and that is none other. And we've got proof right there for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, Mr. Chris Jones. Chris Jones, the 11th member officially of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. He is here with us talking all things EBW, XCW's Cold Day in Hell coming up on February the 8th, 2024, in just a little over 28 days from now. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, where all wrestling matters here on Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station. And if you want to follow XCW, you can do that here at XCW Shelbyville, where you can watch Cold Day in Hell, New Year's Nemesis, where Chris Jones had the shoot heard around the world, XCW All Access, Instagram, XCW_Shelbyville, Twitter, XC Wrestling 1, Facebook, XCW Shelbyville, and also if you like me, you want to buy some merchandise like I do, you go to xcwrestling1.wixsite.com/Shelbyville, and if you want to support Sportswire Radio, of course, you can do that anytime. Past, present, and future shows, past, present, and future XCW shows. All you have to do is check out the link, give us a sub. We're closing in on 500 subscribers, so help us get there. I know we'll get there, but make life a little bit easier for us. And 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you can listen to us anytime on our internet radio station at sportswireradio.org. And whether you have a podcast, you want to play live music, you want to hear different topics out there, I take care of all the station engineering, cost, production, whatever it might be. I handle all of that. We give back to the community, just like XCW and EBW does. So if you want to get involved, join the conversation. Let me know. And also, if you want to read about Chris Jones going into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame and becoming the first member of the second class of that Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, you can go to tumblr.com at Sportswire Radio. Check us out. Check out the announcement myself. Check out that certificate. Check out the statement that I made about Chris Jones, and look at the long list of accomplishments. In fact, Chris Jones has so many accomplishments, I couldn't even list half of them. But that's why he's the first member of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And I'll be back here tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with Paige Palazzo. Paige Palazzo is actually the head coach of the U.S. Women's National Amputee Soccer Team. Really, really cool story. She's been featured on Today's Show. She's been featured on all news stations out in the world. In the U.S., she's traveled all over the place. She's been a semi-pro soccer player. She's also coached here locally in New York. She's also led the Long Island football team. She's also led a number of different really cool things out there and giving back to the community. She's going to share her stories about all of that here. A little bit break from the wrestling coverage. We're going to talk about somebody that's made a great difference in so many people's lives. Paige Palazzo, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'll be back here Saturday, 8 o'clock with ADT, not the security system, Chris Jones, but he's actually the Alliance Wrestling League new champion. He's going to talk about Jack Delta, brother, because he called out Jack Delta, and he's going to talk about Jack Delta because Jack Delta responded on Monday's show. So that means ADT's coming back to respond to Jack Delta. And then Sunday night, to be here is Omen Black and Soldier GP, who are in XCW. They're squaring off with Justin Parsley and Rob Slater at Encounters episode 11 for those XCW Tag Team Championships. Maybe that's a show you'll be scouting, Omen Black and Soldier GP of the Foundation. Maybe you need some size. Maybe you need some muscle. Maybe you need some strength. Maybe you need a hardcore god in Omen Black, the boogeyman of the Midwest, or a popular heel monster and Soldier GP. Maybe that's exactly what you're looking for. They're going to be here live once again. You know they're going to be talking about Justin Parsley. You know they're going to be talking about Rob Slater. They're going to be here live Sunday night, to be announced on what time they'll be here later in the week. But right here, we are now with the 11th member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame and the first member of our second class, the one and only, the franchise player of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame and the EBW leader, Chris Jones. I have a few more comments. Let me get to some people here. And also, I have been corrected. And I'm going to bring this up here. In fact, I'm going to take this off the stage. And this individual here, I guess you've referred to, kind of broke the fourth wall here. I'm also in on the card collecting with Eric Mason. It's a business. What do you say to that there, Chris Jones?
As time goes on, ACT loses more focus. I will say, I understand that, it might be a business. You might have that Michael Jordan rookie, Chris Jones, being a Michael Jordan fan, can't see that Chicago Bulls blanket. So you might have that Michael Jordan rookie, but you have a lot more on your plate than card collecting like Eric Mason. I mean, you're still champion. Eric Mason's not. You, ACT, Jaden Jones, we'll go as that far to get that real with it. You're supposed to be the leader of the XCW locker room. There's nobody higher, besides Chris Jones, higher than the XCW champion. You are supposed to be that guy. You are him. You are it. Not Brogan's, not Corey Lee's,
not Parsley and Slater.
Not Parsley, not Slater.
Not Patrick O'Reilly, not Tommy the Man Merriman, who's back. Not Leon Lux, certainly. I mean, you fair points.
So when I walk into Cold Day in Hell for that XCW championship, Full Metal Madness, you walking in against you've never wrestled anybody my caliber. Walking in, elbow injury and all. No excuses. I don't want to hear about no card collecting. I don't want to hear about no fiancés. I don't want to hear about nothing. I just want ACT, 100% aware. ACT, 100% prepared. I want nothing more than Alex Cardona Thompson.
You don't seem to be a card collector much. You don't seem to be the card collector type, Mr. Jones. You certainly don't seem to be that type. And certainly you do bring up the XCW locker room. And to me, it's such a fractured locker room still. We had Brogan on the show a few months ago. And after he had won the EBW title, and Brogan was basically, he was up in arms with Venom. We know Venom's out. Jay Ellis certainly has had his issues in the locker room with certainly the way things have been run. You bring up ACT, and there's really no confidence in him and his leadership. Patrick O'Reilly, let's not even go there. Tommy the Man Merriman's back. Who knows what happens there? Parsley and Slater and Corey Lee, those guys have been into themselves. They haven't thought much of Venom, and they haven't really been with some of these guys we currently see in the locker room with. Jackson Law, Jackson was here Sunday, and, Jackson had really no love almost for anybody in that locker room. Jackson very well. Jackson's a guy that certainly, he kind of bangs to his own drum. So if you look at the locker room as a whole, there's a lot of dissension. Eric Mason, Eric Mason said all the right things on this platform, but he doesn't even have the championship that he was using to get to Leon Lux in that 7 defenses. Hunter Halkin, let's not even go there. Let's not even go there with that situation. That's a whole keg of worms. So the facts are is that, the whole locker room, we had DJ Wahlberg here. Unholy. Let's not even go there. What they think in terms of locker room. So I just named off what half the locker room just now. And none of these people in the locker room, for the most part, get along. XCW is in more turmoil than I think we've ever seen in a long time.
Chris Jones will keep his outside XCW business ventures out of XCW or out of the limelight because Chris Jones is always focused. You talk about having a fractured XCW locker room, talk about unholy, where the best member of the team's Candy. In my eyes,
she was impressive at Fight or Fight. She was really impressive. There's no question what she did. Listen, she almost won that Rumble.
We'll keep it PG, but there's an old EBW quote: "We're all about belts and big titty women." That's so.
Well, you know what? She's certainly as I said on last week's show, she's definitely the Candy Crush for many in the locker room, and certainly she's been the one that certainly stood out the most. I don't know if she's going to go on and certainly exceed what Unholy has done, but the facts are you are correct in that, listen, Mistress Candy definitely could show that she could hang in there with the big boys. She did a number on a few of them, and she's definitely the Candy Crush of the locker room. Fair point.
I did, there's a lot of people you mentioned I've been in the ring with DJ Wahlberg.
Yep.
He couldn't cut the mustard against Chris Jones, but you mentioned some other people. I want to get something straight. A lot of people just might think I'm the scum of the earth, when they once cheered me, to put my body on the line, to kill myself over and over. They want to see the dives over the top rope. They want to see the moonsaults out of the corner. They just want to see me throw my body at the ground, throw my body against the ladder, set myself on fire, get slammed on thumbtacks. They wanted to cheer me then, but now they think I'm the scum of the earth. Let Chris Jones get one thing straight. Chris Jones does respect many people in the XW locker room, but I don't have to be friends with many of those people in the locker room. You go back to 2021, one of the big people that hate EBW more than anybody else is Brogan O'Shea.
Yes.
You know, Chris Jones paid a little respect to Brogan O'Shea after that match.
Yep.
That post match, a lot of people just might think that's nothing. Actually means something. So like I don't not respect a lot of people in XW locker room, but there's still a lot of people that need to earn that respect in the locker room, and it's fractured. Nobody likes each other. It's like, I'm sure the audience ranges quite a bit for Sportswire, but like you go back to the end of the old WCW days, or like the end of the ECW days, like where nobody really knows kind of what's going on. Or
How about Impact in 2010? Listen, Hogan and Bischoff come in, and TNA's locker room, there was chaos and there was tension. You bring up ECW in 2000, where they had all the issues where they couldn't fund the shows anymore and they were off the network. And then you mentioned WCW, and it's a great point because yes, the Sportswire audience is very different. It's a very versatile audience. We have people that come and listen to us for different things, but for the wrestling audience here, I look at the XCW locker room. As you know, Chris Jones, we've been covering XCW now for about, I think, a good 5 or 6 months. And from what I've seen in the second half of the season, since EBW has returned, I mean, there is almost a crisis of confidence. There's really no unity in the locker room. I mean, you look at the locker room as a whole. I mean, listen, even the XCW champions, they don't seem to be waving the flag. Who's waving the flag in XCW? Brogan, maybe? Okay, Brogan. You mentioned ACT. He certainly struggled in doing that because he's trying to save himself and save that title. I mean, Corey Lee's not no fan of anybody. Corey Lee came on here and said, I'm not getting involved in that no more. I did that already. I saved XCW. I'm on my own at this point. Jay Ellis, he's got other focuses. I mean, certainly Parsley and Slater, they've got to worry about Omen, Black, and Soldier GP right now. So they're not saving XCW themselves. If they wanted to, they're not doing it. Eric Mason, spoke about him already. I mean, Jack Delta, I mean, you seem like you had a friendly conversation with him. So you know what, Jack Delta, he's not loyal to XCW. He's the New Age champion right now. Hunter Halkin, let's not even go there. Leon Lux, we mentioned that already. Tommy the Man Merriman, he's back. Let's see what happens there. Jackson Law, already had him Sunday. We know where he stands on the show. Unholy, we mentioned all that. I mean, I can go on all day. The facts are that there is no unity in the XCW locker room.
Yeah. Let me tell you this. Chris Jones, always a big, I love WCW. Rey Mysterio is my favorite wrestler of all time, which might be surprising to many. Some people might think Randy Orton. But Rey Mysterio is my favorite wrestler of all time. My favorite stable was the Filthy Animals in WCW.
I remember that very well. Yes, Conan. That was Tori Wilson, Kidman. Sure, yes, I do.
Eddie Guerrero. I loved ECW wrestling. I like hardcore wrestling as much as my body doesn't. I do. So when things like that kind of fall apart, and obviously things come to air. And, Chris Jones has been a part of the HCW locker room, the SBW locker room, and when those companies imploded, which were, I'll give you a history lesson. Justin Parsley and Hazard ran companies together, and when that imploded, Chris Jones was first draft pick to BYW. I didn't even know Justin Parsley really back then. Like, we weren't friends. Like, I didn't know him back then. BYW eventually fell apart. You go to XCW, even as a hated guy as Chris Jones was in real life back then. Like, Fletch, let me put that rocket to your back, Chris. Let me send you to the moon because, I was as good as I am. And I've been in that XCW. I've been in the UIW locker room. And, it's even with independent wrestling, as I've been a part of some of those locker rooms in my career, there's a lot of politics backstage.
Oh, you think? I mean, listen, I actually, to save you that, I certainly said my own CM Punk pipe bomb moment on the British independent wrestling scene about 2 weeks ago, and I had like half the country say, yeah, thank you for waving the flag. The other half was like, what's wrong with you? How dare you? So, well, they came after my platform, so I had to shoot and defend myself like anybody else. And some people said thank you, other people said how dare you. So I get it. I get the politics. I get all that. Clearly, some guys in the locker room, the younger talents, don't understand what it takes. Clearly, the locker room right now suffers from a crisis of confidence, a lack of leadership. Venom failed to do his job. Venom is out. Fletch has to worry about Miano Diaz. He's worried about you guys. We can certainly go on all day about that. I wanted to ask you a question before we get into the second half of the show in the last 30 or so minutes. We are here now with the 11th member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. One more time, the first member of our second class, the legendary franchise player, Chris Jones, who was our franchise player of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. I kind of wanted to break the fourth wall for a second, if you don't mind. And I wanted to ask you a question because you got a really, really monumental accomplishment that you achieved in behalf of your outside career from wrestling. And that is, you're a really accomplished and respected writer in the gaming world. And I wanted to ask you, for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, what did it mean to you to win the 2023 Lords of Gaming Writer of the Year award?
Even now, to be honest, it's kind of surreal. Like, I know I can get 1,000 views easy on articles, but no, Chris Jones all about them history lessons tonight. My second half of my junior year in high school, which is primarily writing focused, I failed that class. I had to take it again my senior year. Granted, I still graduated pretty high in my class. Like, I failed the writing portion.
Well, so if it makes you feel better, my writing's not too good. You probably saw my statement when you were like, I could do better than that.
So, I had no interest to write anything, no wrestling content, no video game articles, nothing. You fast forward to 2021, the end of the year, I had some, I would say, valuable information about a game coming into a subscription service. And, I wanted to try to use that to try to get on a podcast or something. And, shout out to Gaming Beyond the Box and Wilmy Hood for my first opportunity to get onto a gaming focused podcast. I didn't have to share that information there because they're not really into that type of video games per se. But Wilmy Hood, very awesome guy. Call him the meme lord of Twitter. He's very cool. But Wilmy gave me my foot in the door, and then so I'm like, what can I do to try to pole vault myself further into this thing? And then I randomly, by chance, I found the Iron Lords podcast, which you alluded to, Lords of Gaming, Iron Lords podcast on YouTube, over 21,000 subscribers.
Oh my God, what a following! What a following!
And, amazing group of four guys. We'll talk about in a second. But I hit them up. I knew one of them was into that style of game. I'm like, hey, I didn't tell them what it was because you give them the whole meal before. I give them a little bit of appetizer. Like, you should probably look into this. And one of them was like, okay, I will. And then I mentioned it to another one. And he's like, you should kind of turn that into an article for our site. And I'm like, didn't know you had a site. So, a little test, by chance, a little test article. I didn't think anything about it. And boom, writing for Lords of Gaming, lordsofgaming.net, and multiple, they call Writer of the Month, they call it Scribe. Multiple Scribe of the Month. 2022, I thought for sure I was a shoo-in. I had video game developer interviews. I did all this stuff in 2022. I thought for sure I was a shoo-in, and I didn't win. And kind of upset me a little bit because I thought I was that guy. I pride myself on being the Michael Jordan of LogNet. So in the beginning of 2023, I almost thought about quitting, to be honest. I actually have a article that I wrote called My LogNet Journey because I like to do a lot of more personal stuff and community-focused gaming content. But I talked about it in my LogNet Journey. It's like the year 2023, I almost quit. But, one of the editors, kind of, talked to me. We talked about it, and I talked to Lord Cognito. Lord Cognito, amazing individual. He's had my back since I joined Lords of Gaming. He's pretty much like you're the voice of Sportswire. Lord Cognito is one of the main hosts of the Iron Lords podcast. And, we talked, and I respect their decision. It wasn't me. But in 2023, I made sure that they had no option but to choose me. Went to PAX East for my first time, to meet these four guys I've never met with. I'm staying with another writer I'd never met in person. So I took a chance on these guys, and, I had no idea what these guys were about in person. Like, they could have been some of the most rudest individuals, but they're not. They treated me like family. King David, another one of the Iron Lords, kind of boosted me up to take my second plane ride ever because, Chris Jones don't like flying. I don't like boats either, to be honest.
That's you know what, we're actually the same on that. And I know I'm supposed to wink come into XCW for Summer Mania, and I flew one time. My parents, we went on a vacation in 2000 to Florida, and on the way back to New York, the plane wouldn't land for like 3.5 hours. And since that moment, I'm like, I haven't flown since. I'm so terrified to fly. You have no idea.
But there's a little mishap with my acceptance video for Sunday, and on their last show, which was
I saw that on Facebook. You posted that on Facebook. There was a mishap on your acceptance video.
But I called them the Infinity Gauntlet of Gaming because you got Lord Cognito, which is a lot of people consider the main voice of the Iron Lords podcast, even though they're all four equal. Lord Cognito's a man of the people. He's a man who, we'll say, a man who defends the masses. Lord Cognito's all about, talking to video game developers. He's, like I said, man of the people. You got King David, who's man of confidence. We'll call him the marketing manager or whatever. He's the one that, plans a lot of the merch and stuff like that. Lord Sovereign, King David, and Lord Cognito have been friends since they were kids. King David and Lord Cognito are actually family, even though they all consider themselves family. To be honest, I consider them family. But Lord Sovereign's got that intellectual prowess, that suave that he brings to the show. Then you got Lord Addict, who does a lot of the work behind the scenes. Guy, young, like 20, 25, 26, working his butt off, never gets as much credit as I think that he deserves. He's got that never say die, never give up attitude. So you combine them together, I feel that the Infinity Gauntlet of Gaming. So without them, without the editors, I've mentioned them before. Mahmood, very excellent editor, lives in Bahram, overseas.
Wow. I've heard of Bahram, sure.
I write all different hours of the day because my work schedule, I'm night shift. He covers it. I call him World Tier Boss, Josh. He's in the Air Force, I believe. And
wow, thank you for your service.
He's the lead guy for reviews, and Chris Jones talks about the final boss. Josh is one of the bosses of reviews, and he's helped me learn a lot. Because I'll tell you, I might pull in 1,000 views, but I'll admit my writing wasn't great when I first started. But you combine lordsofgaming.net, lordsofgaming.net, and Ireland's podcast all together for the Lords of Gaming family. It's a force to be reckoned with. You said a premier gaming publication. And the interesting thing is, we're not like, the IGNs or Windows or anything like that. We're not funded. Like, this is an independent thing. We do also our own. Like, I'm going to PAX East in March. Chris Jones has to pay for his flight.
Hey, listen, Sportzwire, listen, we spoke about the internet radio station. I pay for that. We speak about all the things we do here on Sportzwire, the lighting, the StreamYard stuff, all the people come on, I understand. Listen, trust me, I understand the sacrifice. I was in a convenience store earlier buying my Big Gulp, and somebody asked me, they said, they were watching one of my shows that we did here on Sports, but in fact, it was the Jack Delta one. And they said, well, how much have you made on Sportswire? I said, I've only made $24 on Sportswire, but I'm not here for the money. Thankfully, I don't have to do it for the money. And I said, I love sports. I love community. We've made a difference in people's lives. And I completely understand that point that, yes, you're not IGN, but the facts are you have earned this award. This is definitely an award that you earned that was not given to you. It was earned. And I was just curious real quick, and I will come back to the final few questions on wrestling, I promise. But is there any games you're looking forward to writing about this year in 2020? Because I know we have gamers in here. There are people, Jules is a gamer. D'Angelo the Flame, definitely games. I have my buddy Drake Gold Dragons coming on the show. There's definitely gamers in here. Everybody that's a wrestling fan loves to game. So is there any games you're looking forward to writing for in 2024?
There's always something I'm looking forward to writing. Some stuff I'm currently looking into. I can't talk due to NDAs and stuff like that.
Sure.
If you've stayed up to date with Chris Jones, my favorite series is a series called Suikoden. It's a Japanese role-playing game. I've played it since I was a kid. It's the game that got me into gaming. If it wasn't for that, I probably, that game particularly, I wouldn't be as into gaming as I am. So they're coming out with HD remasters of my first and second favorite game ever. So that's, depends on Konami, but that's the story for another day. That's supposed to come in 2024. Mutant Chronicle 100 Heroes, which is another one of those styles of games, is made by the people that made my favorite video game. And I've been covering that every month since the Kickstarter. Avowed, a lot of people that follow Xbox, Avowed's got, it's supposed to be Obsidian's new take on a game like Elder Scrolls, takes place in the Pillars of Eternity universe. But Chris Jones plays everything. There's a PlayStation game, the next Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm looking forward to a lot of things. But one thing is a lot of these indie developers never get enough credit either. That's why these events like PAX East, why we're going there. We went to PAX East last year. I got to see games I would never been able to experience. Like I was in one interview. I'll go talk about it real quick. I was in one interview for a game that Jeff Jarrett was an executive producer on called WrestleQuest. It's a role-playing game based on wrestling. Go check it out. There's a couple pictures of us in the ring. Not with Jeff Jarrett. He wasn't there at the time, but the other people that he works with. So, gaming, as much as this may have many people that know Chris Jones, knows the franchise player, knows C Unit, knows Brother Jones, as much as whether you loved me or hated me in XCW, gaming was always a big part of my motivation to always be better at something, be better in XCW, be better in EBW, be better in gaming, be better all around. And the Lords of Gaming people have helped me. I will say I'm a different person now than when I first joined. They've brought me in as family. And so,
that's very nice.
That's
a cool stuff. I want to ask you one more question in the gaming, which will translate into wrestling. But I do want to say to Jules, she may be flying or driving out to Tennessee to adopt her furry best friend at the Benton County Animal Shelter, which is a very, very noble thing. Thank you, Jules, for doing that. And she's been in regular contact with the volunteers. That's a very, very noble thing. And certainly thank you for going out there to, obviously look after and, certainly adopt a pet. And I wish that more people would do things like that. I think that that's certainly something that we all can get behind. So thank you for that. That's in the neck of the woods of D'Angelo LaFlame. So thank you for that. Ethan's got a question, which I'll come back to toward the end of the show. But let me ask you a question away, kind of tying to the XCW, EBW locker room. Do guys ask you a lot about games? And you're this big gaming writer and you've won these awards now. Do you get asked a lot of questions from guys? There are gamers. I know there are big gamers in the locker room. I'm not going to say who. You probably know who you are in the locker room. But I know that there are gamers out there. Do you get asked questions at all about certain games or certain things out there? I mean, and how does that make you feel?
I mean, one person doesn't like praise, Tom. Let's be honest. I get people always ask me just about gaming in general stuff all the time. And I get people, try to dig at that unreleased video game information that I might or might not have. So it definitely comes up quite a bit in the XCW or EBW locker room.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And I won't ask you about those games because obviously you've already kind of said that you won't say anything further because you're not able to. But I do want to congratulate you one more time on winning the 2023 Lords of Gaming Writer of the Year. Again, this is a premier gaming publication. They are out there on all social media platforms. The podcast on YouTube has over 21,000 subscribers. All you have to do is put a Google search, Lords of Gaming, or follow Chris Jones. Follow him on Twitter, CUnit123123. You see a lot of those publications, those articles he's had out there. Definitely support this man. This man's definitely, listen, the man's done it all. He is the Michael Jordan of writing. He's the Michael Jordan of this sport. He's the Michael Jordan of XCW. He's the Michael Jordan of EBW. He's the Michael Jordan of super kicks because it was sweet to see that super kick once again at New Year's Nemesis. I know he says Randy Orton, but he's got a little bit of Shawn Michaels in him still. The man can do it all. That's why he is the first member of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, and he's a part of our XCW EBW week here. And what a week it was here. DJ Walbert of Unholy kicked things off. Jackson Law to be the final member of the first class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. The 2023 XCW Money in the Bank winner was the second part of the week. Jack Delta, the XCW New Age champion. Jack Delta may be testing his waters in EBW with Chris Jones. And, of course, here with us, Chris Jones, the EBW leader, to be, again, the first member of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. We're not done with XCW coverage ahead or EBW coverage, depending on how you see it, because we have received strong word. We have received authority from a very, very high source, and a source close to that person, that senior XCW official, Festus Davis, is coming on to Sportswire Radio very, very soon. I mean, that's shaking your head there. Why is that shaking your head? I mean, you think that's a good thing, a bad thing? Do you think that Festus Davis should be the senior EBW official? I mean, when are we going to see an EBW official? But in the meantime, he is coming on the show.
If there's ever an official Chris Jones has had the most issues with as a
Festus
bad
Davis.
guy, it's been Ref Festus. I'm pretty sure Ref Festus once kicked my hands, and I might not had the rope or something. I don't know, but he kicked my hands and I got rolled up or something. Ref Festus should be one of the people focusing on his ref work.
Well, apparently he's having a retirement match. He's having one more match, and apparently he's giving us the interview about that match, and he's ready to talk about it very, very soon. And we're going to have an announcement on this weekend. In fact, we're probably going to have an announcement on Sunday's show because it technically is XCW coverage resumes once again with Omen Black and Soldier GP, the men that defeated the current XCW Tag Team Champions, the third member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, a Hall of Fame you also share with in Justin Parsley. So I'm going to ask certainly Mr. Black, we're going to certainly ask Mr. GP about maybe Festus Davis, about EBW, about Mr. Parsley and Mr. Slater. They're going to see those guys again on Encounters Episode 11, Tag Team Championships, this time a no DQ tornado match. So certainly that'll be one for the ages here. But before I get to a few more questions to you, Jules will be very happy to meet the Angel of Fame. We definitely appreciate that very much. Definitely looking forward to the dogs meeting and everything else out there in Tennessee. But let me ask you the question I've been asking generally to most people that have come on the platform here the past few weeks. It's been a while since you've come on here, but what is your goals for 2024?
I think that's pretty simple, Tom. 2024, I'm going to go on. I'll tell you exactly what Chris Jones is going to do.
You tell me.
I'm going to beat ACT at Cold Day in Hell. I'm going to win the XCW title. And then, you know what else is going to happen? We're going to get the EBW title back. You know what else is going to happen? We're going to get the tag team titles. Hell, Chris Jones just might even give the XCW title away. Maybe I give it to Miana Diaz. I don't know. Maybe I give it to a random fan in the audience because once EBW takes over in 2024, that XCW title is not going to mean nothing, Tom, because, you know, we got the EBW title to mean something. Obviously, you know, I mentioned there was a total of 4 targets, Tom. Aaron Blaze wasn't a target. He was just a speed bump in the road.
Well, you guys literally drove over him. In fact, you drove over him so much that he's basically literally a part of the road because he's no longer here in XCW. So clearly there's only one Blaze now in XCW. There's only one Blaze that's a part of EBW, XCW, and that is Luke Blaze.
Yeah, I don't know what the XCW locker room did to Aaron Blaze, but I know Chris Jones was the one that came out victorious in that match.
So I'll actually do the answer for you. I'll actually give you the answer. Remember when Bobby the Brain Heenan got thrown out by Gorilla Monsoon on Monday Night Raw in 1993?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what EBW and XCW did to Aaron Blaze. Basically took him and said, you know what? You're out of here.
And like I alluded to before, ACT's Chris Jones' second target. You should have known from the moment I came in as the masked guy at SummerMania, the moment I super kicked ACT, from the moment I helped Brady Branson win and we brought EBW back, that, you know, I mentioned the last show, there's a clip you shared earlier that Chris Jones and ACT were going to cross paths. So ACT's the second target.
You mentioned that months ago. Listen, you mentioned that, and you said it to me off the air even. Stay tuned. In fact, we speak from time to time, and you even said, stay tuned. You weren't saying anything. You weren't spoiling anything, and you kind of said it tonight. You kind of said that you've been staying quiet. You've been kind of paying attention. You know, some guys come on the Sportswire from the locker room, and ACT, prime example, he was mouthing off, calling himself the real hardcore guy against Atomic Titan. You know, there's been some guys that have come on here. Eric Mason, certainly Brogan's been on here in the past on Sportswire and comments. There's been a number of different guys that have come on here, and they've been very confident in voicing their opinions. But you've been kind of like the veteran that you are, the franchise player that you are, kind of biding your time, waiting in the weeds, and it looks like you're right now primed and poised and about to strike in a big way.
You got to pick and choose your spots sometime in this business, Tom. And like you just said, poised and ready to strike. You never know when Chris Jones is going to strike. just like ACT realized at SummerMania. How many people thought that after beating Miano Diaz, I was going to give him the EBW championship?
I didn't think so. We spoke about. I was genuinely shocked. I was genuinely shocked at what you did with Miano Diaz. But you know what? I mean, you created a star. I mean, look at Miano Diaz. Miano Diaz, I think, is going to be one of the biggest names to look for in 2024. Yes, everybody talks about Hunter Halkin. Yes, Jackson and I spoke about him, no question. I'm not taking anything away from Hunter's talent. Hunter Halkin maybe had the match of the year at SummerMania, certainly in 23 and 24. I think that he's going to have even bigger matches, bigger moments ahead. But Miano Diaz, I mean, we don't even have this guy a 10th near his prime. And I kind of feel with Miano Diaz coming out of his shell, you're the reason, Chris Jones, the franchise player, the EBW leader, you're the reason that Miano Diaz now is relevant. I mean, Miano Diaz was kind of basically, he was treading water. Now, I think he's going to be one of the biggest stars in 2024.
I'm here to motivate and elevate, Tom. I allude to many things on the show. Some people that are intelligent enough might pick up on them. Some people might not pick up on them. We go to you look at some of the people I've been in the ring with. What happened after they wrestled Chris Jones?
Went out and became bigger stars, bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and better.
Exactly. Well, I always allude to the Brogan match because it's a perfect example. Me and Brogan wrestled a death match. Chris Jones, at the time, had the only winning record in a death match. What I do, came in, put over, I don't want to say new guy because Brogan wasn't really a new guy at the time, but put over a newer guy. What happened? He went on to be one of the biggest baby faces for a while until he turned heel again. Like, Chris Jones doesn't do anything without reason. Chris Jones would turn on his best friend in XCW of all time, like Fletch, back in years ago when I turned on Fletch because Emily Moore put Chris Jones and Fletch, I think it was, against each other. Winner went on for opportunity at XCW Championship. Everybody
I think you mentioned that in one of the XCW. Was it maybe sometime later you mentioned in one of those? You did mention
probably, but I turned on my best friend to go on to and break his leg, essentially in story, to go on and win that XCW championship as Brother Jones. So, like, I don't do anything without reason. I think that's a big problem you mentioned fragmented XCW locker room has is maybe some people don't want to put other people over. You know? Chris Jones obviously has no problem doing that in EBW. I pole vaulted. I handed the reins of EBW over to Miano Diaz and gave him the EBW championship. And he went on. He's main evented in 2023 more times than Patrick O'Reilly has his entire career.
Well, I would say, listen, what did I say? Miano Diaz now went from treading water to being a guy that I think in 2024 is a guy to watch to be one of the breakout superstars in 24. Look at what you did. You've unleashed something in Miano Diaz. Miano Diaz, forget the Miano Diaz that we saw 6 months ago. The Miano Diaz that we see now and even 6 months later from now, he might be the guy that's leading EBW. I don't know. Listen, Miano Diaz right now, and James Cerebral's back as gold. James Cerebral, plus your trusted associate, James Cerebral, can never forget him.
We don't want to – I'll be remiss if I scoff at James Cerebral. Someone who's always been Chris Jones's right-hand soldier.
He's been there with you for decades. I mean, James Cerebral has always been there with you, and he's always believed in you. James Cerebral, I mean, if there's anybody that's waved this flag and kept that EBW banner alive until that moment where you striked out of nowhere and you came in from the weeds, primed and poised for another big EBW moment, James Cerebral was that man that certainly kept that fire burning.
It's a man that even tried to bring it up in my face. You go back to, I can't remember the SummerMania, so I know Fletch will correct me later. Maybe SummerMania 17, I think. I don't know. It's around that era, but there was a time where
21,
Chris Jones versus James Cerebral at SummerMania.
Yes.
With Gabe, former EBW confidant, as the special guest referee. We wanted to see who really, waved that EBW flag. And obviously, I Quit match, Chris Jones rained out on top of the figure four around the ring post. But if there's ever a Chris Jones stable, someone that you might have to wait for in the weeds is James Cerebral. always, always by my side. And he's poised and ready to strike for a great 2024. One thing I will say this is it doesn't matter if EBW wins, doesn't matter if EBW loses. Obviously, we want to win, but Chris Jones' career has spanned 4 decades.
Think about that for a second. The 90s, you were dominant. The 2000s, I mean, listen, you were superstar of the year. You won world titles. You were inducted into the Hall of Fame well before your prime of your career. Extreme King winner. I mean, you pretty much did everything there was in that decade. In the 10s, still were relevant, still were main eventer, still were world champion. And then in this decade now, I mean, what you've done outside the ring, inside the ring, as a manager, as now a performer again. I mean, it's really, to me, we look back in the history of the sport, and I'll even go further. You know, I was thinking about this here and coming up with the collection of the Hall of Famers that we have officially in the Hall of Fame. So we're going to have some more Hall of Famers by the next few weeks. We have some college, athletics coaches coming in. That's a different discussion for a different time. We certainly have promoters coming on here, James Barris in the UK. We have other veteran performers coming out there from different parts of the world. But if you look at your career, you're the only one, I think, of everybody that I have inducted in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame that's been relevant in 4 decades. Think about this. I mean, the definition of a Hall of Fame is somebody who's done something great. But you've done that for the longest period of time of everybody in the Hall of Fame. You know, you had a longer run than Fletch. Josh Allen and TBW, just getting started, only 7 years. Jackson Law, only about 7 or 8 years. You know, you think about my guy Ernest Dove in baseball, only 10 years. Rob Maraska, really just 5 years. Justin Parsley, I mean, kind of had some interesting breaks in between his careers to getting him into the 2 Hall of Fames. We have Dean Allmark, who certainly wrestled. Brian Danielson beat him, Jushin Thunder Liger, but he didn't start until 2000. RPD, boxing now wrestling, the first ever British boxer turned wrestling world champion, only started his career really in the late 2000s. The facts are, is all the people that are in our Hall of Fame, you're the only one that's been relevant and been a main eventer and a Hall of Famer for 4 decades. Listen, Chris Jones, with all due respect to the 10 names in the Hall of Fame already in Sportswire Radio, you could have been a Hall of Famer if we had a Hall of Fame class back in 98, 99. You probably could have been inducted. The simple facts.
I don't know about that. I was pretty young in the 90s, but
just go with it. Just go with it.
Yeah.
Listen, because Jacoby's probably going to get the Hall of Fame probably by the end of the year. I mean, listen, I'm not even going there, you and Jacoby, but the facts are, I mean, look, Jacoby Fletcher's probably going to be inducted at some point by the end of the year based on his career. I mean, so the facts are, is I stand by what I said. In the 90s, you could have been a Hall of Famer.
A lot of people don't realize how good Jacoby is going to be when he's older. To be honest, as someone who trains the kid, he's got potential to be better
He's
than
got
I
that
ever.
EBW streak. I mean, he certainly went after his father.
He's got an EBW shirt now.
Parsley. I mean, and he gets the views. I mean, listen, Jacoby's definitely a man I would not want to mess with. He's a boy, but he's really a man. I mean, listen, Jacoby, I mean, that's the man at the end of the day I'm going to be watching for. I know you're going to certainly be recruiting him in the coming years for sure, no question. Also, we think about the Hall of Fame, was an Omen and Soldier, also a part of XCW, and they've only been in this sport for 2 years. Think about it. All the people I mentioned, I'll run them down in chronological order before we get to closing thoughts. RPD, Grand Slam UK wrestling champion, boxing champions, only had a career in both sports for maybe, 14, 15 years. Dean Allmark didn't start his career until 2000. We had Justin Parsley. We know the history there. We had Fletch. Fletch's career is a little bit behind yours. We had Josh Allen and TBW, 2017. Ernest Dove, my guy in baseball, 2014. We had Omen and Soldier, 2 years maybe, if that. My guy Rob Maraska in baseball, 5 years really. Jackson Law, 7, maybe 8 years at most. I mean, it was his 8th year. But you, Chris Jones, being the 11th member of our Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, you were a Hall of Famer in 98, 99, would have been over. Your career would have been, at that time, multiple championships already. It would have been done. My next guy is being inducted into the Hall of Fame, 12th and 13th, Chris Bizea, Patrick Trotty. They cover, their podcasters, cover baseball and football. I mean, they don't have the career that you've had. And I'm not knocking anybody in the Hall of Fame. We love our Hall of Famers. They're all Hall of Famers. But compared to Chris Jones is the only one in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And this could be you could be possibly the only Hall of Famer in Sportswire Radio history to have actually been a Hall of Famer in 4 decades. I'm thinking about the current class and the future class getting inducted this month and next month. I don't know of anybody else that we've had that's going to have had a 4-decade run of dominance like you've had. So you might be the only one. Listen, we might have to just have a sole Hall of Fame spot for Chris Jones, because as far as I know, as the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station, the People's Radio Station, where all wrestling matters, is your voice of wrestling, the Reverend Tom Bryce. As far as I can think of, the current and the future Hall of Famers in Sportswire Radio, there is not a single one that I can think of that's been a Hall of Famer in their category, what they've done, and has been dominant for 4 decades like you have been.
I mean, you said it yourself. It's kind of funny because I remember before you started the whole Hall of Fame thing, we actually, talked about it a little bit. And
we did. You were actually kind of the inspiration. I was thinking about it, but then I thought about it. And we were talking, there's so much to talk about. There's chapter 2. I've gotten close to Justin Parsley. Justin's one of my favorites. We love watching Justin. I talk with, I guess you could say XCW's Omen Black and Soldier GP. And, and I was thinking about it. And I've been doing this for 5 years, and I've probably interviewed, no joke, I would say, not going to lie, between 500 and 1,000 people over the past 5 years. And it would be a pretty interesting Hall of Fame. And I thought about with what you've done, and yeah, maybe we should have a Hall of Fame. Maybe we should recognize people. And it's kind of taken a life of its own here since really our conversation about 3 months ago, if you think about it.
I don't know why it always seems to happen, but conversations or something like it's
Chris
always
Jones. It's all about Chris Jones. Chris Jones is the sole reason why Sportswire Radio has a Hall of Fame. Chris Jones is the sole reason why Sportswire Radio continues to grow. Chris Jones is the sole reason why Sportswire Radio, people come on and want to talk about it. The simple facts are, when Chris Jones talks and when Chris Jones says something, you wait in the weeds, you think about it. It may not click at that moment, but the facts are the facts. When Chris Jones speaks, it certainly comes to truth and it comes to action.
Since the beginning of time, since the beginning with Justin Parsley all the way up to current era with, the XCW guys, I've always, in the beginning, I'd always say I am the best. I know I'm the best. But it's different when people get asked, who do you think is the best superstar all the time? Who do you look up? Who do you want to wrestle with? Who do you think's the best match of all time and stuff like that? And when they say your name, it brings a whole different perspective on the situation. I don't have to go around, 2004, 2005, Chris Jones would be shocked to think that, for example, Blackheart of former XAWA.
Yes, and now, we had him on the show, yes.
Now excellent XCW commentator would be shocked to know someone from a different company would come in and say, Chris Jones, the best of all time. Fletch, a guy who hated my guts in 2004. A guy
you kind of corrected me when I spoke about Corey Lee being the greatest. You were kind of like, it's Chris Jones. And to be fair, you're in the Hall of Fame before Corey is. I mean, I know Corey will be inducted. To be fair, Corey, we will induct you. It's just that we had Chris first. But yeah, I mean, you are.
I don't necessarily think being in a Hall of Fame before somebody else actually makes them better. But we'll get back to Fletch real quick. I slept on Fletch's couch throughout my high school career. He's going from being hated to having my back like that to, he's essentially, for family nowadays. I gave his son EBW shirt for Christmas. We talked about. Jokes aside, I actually gave Fletch a Chris Jones shirt for Christmas. We'll go ahead and say that. But then you go to Corey Lee, is Chris Jones has wrestled multiple characters over the years, and it's probably why my body is like it is now, breaking down. But, Corey Lee had a hell of a feud with LOL before Corey Lee even went to the heavyweight division. You know who played LOL? Chris Jones.
I wasn't going to say your name. I was going to say play along and say.
People know nowadays.
I understand that. It's a different world. I know. It's a different world.
Chris Jones feuded Corey Lee after he became heavyweight. You talk about, Corey Lee saving EBW, XCW the first time. That was Chris Jones, Corey Lee thing. Granted, I think Emily Moore saved XCW by restarting the match, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. That was sometime later. The last one. That was actually sometime later. The last one, because I just watched it like 2 weeks ago.
It was
I think
mine. We talked
yeah,
about the first
yeah,
AEW.
yeah.
And it's like, so for people like, Blackheart, Fletch, anybody else to recognize me or somebody else as, I mean, I don't have words to compare to what you said, but I also don't want to take anything from people like, like the Fletch or just. I've been a proponent for Justin Parsley to be in the XCW Hall of Fame. I started petitioning at the beginning of No False Finish, and as you're a No False Finish concierge, Tom, if you've watched No False Finish, one of the questions I ask everybody is, who do you think should be in the Hall of Fame?
You did ask that question. Yes, you did ask that question. I remember watching that episode.
And that was because I've been with Justin Parsley since the beginning. So I always felt without Justin Parsley and Hazard, Chris Jones wouldn't have got his start. That's where it all began. So,
well, I think, listen, Justin Parsley, when he's been here and when he's not been here, is actually made a huge impact and a huge difference. In fact, he's made such an impact and such a difference that even Fletch finally admitted not too long ago, yeah, you know what? I'm glad that Justin Parsley is here in XCW finally. I'm glad that he's here and a part of the roster. And listen, obviously, we're not going to go down that road. Obviously, we're going to close the show out in a few minutes, but the facts are is that Justin Parsley, what he brings to the table. You want to talk about storytellers. You want to talk about those that certainly can make a character or a situation breathe. Justin Parsley, to me, is that person. And you also want to think of, people mention you, right? Chris Jones said this or Chris Jones said that. When the facts are there, and the facts can certainly back that up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, yada, yada, yada. When Justin Parsley gets mentioned on Sportswire Radio of anybody in the XCW or EBW roster, Justin Parsley is the one that gets the most engagements. Justin Parsley is the one that gets the most likes. He gets the most views. He gets the most comments. So the facts are facts. If you're in the business of promoting, if you're in, quote unquote, what's best for business, Justin Parsley is the guy that drives the conversation in XCW or EBW. It's no one else. No one else drives the conversation as much as Justin Parsley. And that's why Justin Parsley is not only in the XCW Hall of Fame, but he's in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And I have to say, when I heard him being inducted, when I saw the Viewers' Choice Awards, I felt like, and I said it, I don't know if you probably did watch at least that part of it. I actually felt vindicated as well because I said in my mind, Justin Parsley, really in part because of your show. I remember watching, I remember hearing your ears. I heard what you said. Justin Parsley, hands down, should have been in that Hall of Fame. There is no question in my mind that Justin Parsley, what he's done for this sport overall, that to me should have been done a long time ago. So to me, I'm said enough on that already. I want to ask you one more question before closing thoughts. Is there any final words that you have to say to ACT before February the 8th, 28 days from now, cold day in hell, main event, ACT's world title for now in a match you created, Full Metal Madness?
Look me in the eyes, ACT, because I know you're probably here watching in the background. As I told you earlier, a career spanning 4 decades, you've never stepped in the ring with somebody like me. You've never wrestled somebody like me. You're not going to be able to outsmart somebody like me. So what I need you to do is I need you to stop focusing on TBW. Stop focusing your mind elsewhere, the cards, whatever you're doing. Focus on being that XCW leader. You want to command the respect. You want to show that you're the real XCW champion, that you're a real locker room leader. You want to beat the final boss in Chris Jones. You want to break away from the pack and show that you're the greatest above all. You get that opportunity. Don't squander it. January, cold day in hell, Chris Jones, ACT, Full Metal Madness. I'm going to beat you within an inch of your life. Send you packing home to Katie. And I'll tell you this, Sportswire fans, you're going to see something that you've never seen in XCW in that Full Metal Madness match.
Ooh, ladies and gentlemen, this is why you want to go out and follow XCW and EBW. Because, yes, XCW might be the gold standard, but it might not be for much longer if Chris Jones has his way coming up on February the 8th in the main event at Cold Day in Hell. Full Metal Madness for a company's match that he created. He's going to do it on YouTube at XCW Shelbyville. You can watch Chris Jones footage at XCW All Access on YouTube, Instagram, XCW_Shelbyville, Twitter, XC Wrestling 1, Facebook, XCW Shelbyville. And if you want to buy an EBW shirt, I'm on my way to doing so later this week. xcwrestling1.wixsite.com/Shelby, because we don't want Chris Jones to do what he's going to do to ACT to us. We want to make sure that we support Chris Jones, get that EBW shirt, because if we don't do it, I saw what he said to Katie. I saw what he said to the fans, or the lack of those in the locker room could stand up to him, and I certainly saw what he did to ACT, even kicking his own championship away from him. In fact, Chris Jones right now is so ruthless right now and so cunning. Hayden Vex didn't even walk out with him after New Year's Nemesis. Hayden Vex, that's why he's out of EBW, because we know only those that are here to stay and are here to make Chris Jones proud and happy about what he wants. He doesn't want a group for mediocrity. He doesn't want a group for losses. He only tolerates winning and championships. That's the Chris Jones ways. That's why he's a franchise player, and that's why he is the first member of the second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And before I get to closing thoughts, I want to read off one more comment here. One more comment. Jules NYC, for whatever reason, had her comment removed. Certainly, we apologize if that happened. It's not on our end. But if anyone would like to adopt a furry best friend in the Benton County area in Tennessee, please follow Leslie Marcus. That's Leslie with a MARCHUS on TikTok. That's Leslie Marcus with a CHUS on TikTok. She's a volunteer at the Benton County shelter there in Tennessee. Definitely go out and support them. And actually, one more comment from Mr. Parsley. Apparently, you woke him up. So let me read up from Mr. Parsley, I say, because he is the first real wrestler, and he is one half of those tag team champions. XCW wouldn't exist without Justin Parsley, ? Chris Jones wouldn't be without Justin Parsley, ? Justin Parsley can only cement his legacy because of guys like Fletch, yours truly, but most importantly, the franchise player, Chris Jones, put him over. It's real nice, with a real nice REEL. So there you go. Check it out there. And also, Justin enjoyed the interview. I do feel like, though, I should have did a better intro for you. But, when you win the world title after the 8th of February, you come back here, I feel like we'll do a better intro. But to be fair, I do think if somebody checks out the time, I think the induction ceremony, like the speech I had, was the longest one for you, because you've accomplished so many things. And I was trying to remember all of them. I know I flubbed on one or two words, but it's funny. I thought I did that with Jackson, but I think Jackson was actually better than I thought. I'm sure I'll feel the same way about yours, but I really was trying to remember all the things you've won. It was almost like a long list. You're almost like the Tom Brady, the Michael Jordan. It was like the Derek Jeter in baseball. Like whoever else is out there in sports that's won so much. Robert Horry in basketball. You're an NBA guy. Robert Horry won like 10 championships and averaged like 8 points a game in his career. He probably won more championships than points scored in the NBA. But the facts are, you've won so many things. I was like trying to remember all of them at once. So somebody can check it out there. But also here, definitely want to give a shout out to Justin. Follow Justin on all platforms at Parsley's YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Check him out. Support this man. He's awesome. He's our third member and also the first member, quote unquote, of the XCW EBW wing of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. So I wanted to make sure I put that out there. And also, Justin, by the way, I guarantee you, is the only person in history that in one day will have been inducted in 2 Hall of Fame. I know you've done a lot, Chris Jones. I know you've certainly done a lot. You certainly are Chris Jones. You've won 12 World Championships. You've been Superstar of the Year. You've been Extreme Winner. You've been in 2 Hall of Fames now, but he actually got inducted into 2 Hall of Fames in one day. So it's pretty cool note. But obviously, I know you're a busy man. You've got EBW strategy sessions ahead. You've got conference calls. You've got training sessions. You've certainly got Crack the Whip with, Brady Branson, Emiliano Diaz, James Cerebral, and certainly Luke Blaze, certainly your confidant there. But I want to give you the floor now, give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? And the floor is yours, and fire away, Mr. Franchise Player.
As I alluded to, Chris Jones is not going to be around forever. The body's breaking down. Fighting through an elbow injury suffered in the match with Emiliano Diaz. One thing I can say that I will do is set EBW up for success in 2024. Even if Chris Jones ain't around to run EBW, you got the Bradys, you got the Luke Blazes, you got the Emiliano Diazes, you got James Cerebral's just as worthy. So Chris Jones might not be around forever, but I have people that in my stead I'd be more than happy to turn the reins over to. And one thing you talk about, I've been here since '96. I've done backyard wrestling. I've done some indie wrestling. Fletch likes to call it amateur pro wrestling nowadays.
Semi-pro, semi-pro sounds good.
I've wrestled more people than people can think of. I've even went against. I never had planned on wrestling anybody outside of XCW per se. When I mentioned that, I mean like people out of states. Like the Aaron Blaze is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. There won't be. I'll tell you this right now. There won't be another opportunity like that more than likely for anybody outside, EBW, XCW, any of my previous companies. So Aaron Blaze had an opportunity of a lifetime. So that's something, no matter what he does in the future, that's something he'll be able to have, is because he got that opportunity. Chris Jones ain't around forever. Like I said, I used to do 4 characters in the same show, Tom. So you go to a show like Extreme King, if those characters were champions, I'd wrestle those championship matches, and then I would go on to play all 4 characters in Extreme King.
I can relate. I did 3 shows yesterday. I can relate to that, actually.
Whether some characters were more comedic versus, the more mainstream characters like Chris Jones, LOL and stuff, and like you wanted to try to kind of hide a little bit. You go back and look to the match after Luke Blaze's team beat my team in that match where Chris Jones left. Chris Jones is now part of XCW roster right now. You go back and you look at the last promo in that box. There's multiple hints and stories, and that was the first 10 that EBW was going to potentially come back. So this is the last chance EBW has. EBW, if we lose, we will not come back. EBW 2024 is our opportunity to show our supremacy and reign dominance over XCW. And it's a lot different than the first time. A lot different. Like the first time we came and we just beat down everybody. Well, Chris Jones is smarter than the first time. With age comes experience, and we're beating down specific people for specific reasons. And I told you, Tom, Chris Jones doesn't do anything. I don't post anything, and I don't show anything that I don't mean for people to see. So one thing I want to say outside all that being said is whether you've been on the side that hated Chris Jones or you've been on the side that's loved Chris Jones over the years, one thing I feel I've done well at and excelled at is being able to earn the respect of my peers, be able to earn the respect of XCW Galaxy, and obviously earn Tom Bryce's respect and the Sportswire fans to be inducted into the second class, first member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And also, I've earned the respect in the gaming industry, the writing world. I have big people that follow me. Last article I wrote in December, I had the English voice actor of the Yakuza franchise, big Sega franchise.
I think I shared that on Twitter. I think I did share the post.
Young Yao volunteered to be in my article. Jason Ronald, the guy that designed the current Xbox generation, they call him the Wizard of Xbox. So I've earned the respect of my peers, and I'm multifaceted in what I excel at. So to all of them that followed me, supported Chris Jones, whether you love or hated me, I know you respect me. So to everybody else, thank you.
I've been wanting to say this the whole night, and I should have did this in the induction speech. EBW. I always kind of like when that music goes. I knew you'd break there. EBW. Whoever does that, I love that little EBW. Whoever it might be. EBW.
You would be surprised. You'd be surprised at who does that, Tom.
I'm going to say no comment on that, but I'm going to agree with a couple more comments before we say sayonara. Justin Parsley, I definitely agree. It was a great interview. Perfect candidate. This was, to me, the only candidate to lead the second class. Definitely agree with Jules. Congrats on Chris and Justin. Ethan, yes, thank you for that. In fact, I actually do feel like I'm sweating. I've done 19 shows now in 12 days. So that's certainly, I guarantee that's a record. And Chris Jones, you definitely do deserve to be in our Hall of Fame. I don't know if I'm a beast, but my voice definitely hurts. I can tell you that much. Thank you, Jules. It's a privilege to earn these honors alongside my brother. Tom's the man. I don't know about that. I'll certainly appreciate the kind words. Yes, sir.
One last thing I want to say before we plug any of my social media, thing like that. I said it at the end of last show. I want to say it one more time for the Sportswire, XCW fans, anybody else watching. Like I said at home, Chris Jones is not going to be around forever. But before Chris Jones rides off into the sunset on that EBW high, Chris Jones will return to the beginning.
Oh! Oh, ladies and gentlemen, that's why you want to follow Chris Jones on Instagram, CUnit Chris Jones, TikTok, CUnit Chris Jones, Twitter, CUnit123123. Also, check him out on Threads. He's on Threads as well. Make sure you support him, but also, most importantly, go out there and watch him coming up February the 8th, 28 days from now. Cold day in hell in the main event for the XCW World Heavyweight Championship in a Full Metal Madness, in a match that Chris Jones, the franchise player, the EBW leader, created for the XCW title against ACT. XCW Shelbyville on YouTube, XCW All Access on YouTube as well, Instagram, XCW_Shelbyville, Twitter, XC Wrestling 1, Facebook, XCW Shelbyville. And if you want to buy some merchandise, you want to do EBW merchandise, xcwrestling1.wixsite.com /Shelbyville. I'm going to get my merchandise here in a few days. I promise you. I'm looking forward to wearing it so I can say EBW. But until then, I thought it was funny to end that way. Congratulations. You have definitely proven why you should have been the only choice to be the first member of our second class of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. You are definitely our franchise player of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, the only one most likely who have been relevant and dominant in 4 decades. And also, congratulations on being the 2023 Lords of Gaming Writer of the Year, my friend.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was here the 11th member officially of our Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame and the first member of our second class of the Hall of Fame, Chris Jones. We're going to see Chris in action here coming up on XCW Encounters episodes alongside EBW members, but most importantly in that main event coming up here on February the 8th, 28 days from now. XCW Cold Day in Hell main event for a match he created, which he's never lost in, Full Metal Madness against ACT for the XCW World Championship in that main event. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, where all wrestling matters, the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station. I'll be back here tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want something different, I'll be here with U.S. women's amputee soccer coach. She just coached the World Cup out there with Miss Paige Palazzo. She's going to be, I almost forgot her name. She would have killed me. Speaking about people who really would have killed me, Chris Jones. This woman would have kicked me in the nuts there if I would have forgot her name. Paige Palazzo, she's going to be here. She's also a huge part of things with the Long Island Futsal team, the national team for the futsal team, and she's going to talk about her journey here and some. But until then, stay tuned for more XCW coverage, quote unquote. Sunday night, Justin Parsley, Omen Black, Soldier GP are live on Sportswire Radio to talk about the next time you're in the ring with them, Encounters episode 11, and they're going to talk about all things related to their show next weekend, IMF's New Year's Vengeance. But until then, thank you to the XCW Galaxy, to the EBW Galaxy. Thank you to Fletch. Thank you to everybody else that has made this possible, and especially to Chris Jones. But until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, on the #1 global radio station, that is Sportswire